I think the importance of cultural diplomacy rests on the importance of culture, and in many ways culture is the most importantly and deeply defining factor in humanity. I mean, human beings are defined most of all by their culture, and so developing understandings of culture, what drives it, what it can achieve, and where it comes from, and how different cultures can in fact react well against each other and can feed each other rather than be in opposition to each other. And indeed how different cultures that appear very different from each other have very strong common roots. All those things help us to understand our common humanity and our common interest in peace, prosperity, security. So for that reason, I think cultural diplomacy is extremely important. I think, yes, I would say in two main ways. One is people understanding more the importance of it, understanding more that you can have big agreements between governments, you can have big multilateral structures, but unless people, in their hearts, in their cultures, buy into a particular idea, it's not going to work, and conflict will keep on breaking out. So number one is that people have realized to a much greater extent the importance of culture in achieving the peace and prosperity that we're all aiming for. Number two is, I think, people understanding that cultural diplomacy is not primarily about pushing your culture at other people and saying, look at us, this is our culture, and isn't it great? And you should subscribe to this, or you should pay attention to that. But rather, actually providing activities and fora in which culture can be exchanged, in which people can get to understand each other's culture better by directly participating with each other. That's been a big change, I think, over the last 10 or 20 years. Well, I think it's demonstrated that culture is, by its very nature, collaboration. Culture is not something that is done by one group to another group. It's something that is done by human beings with each other. Culture, almost by definition, is not something that can be done by one person on their own or one group on their own. It's about action and reaction, about response, about collaboration.
What are the objectives you wish to see achieved in the future on the long term when it comes to culture?
Well, I think the key objectives are that people should understand that the roots of human culture are much more similar than they might think from what different cultures actually look like now. That they come from basically the same driving forces, the same needs, the same aspirations, all expressed in very different ways, but aiming at the same objectives. That, I think, is the important thing that people can learn from this kind of cultural exchange and cultural diplomacy. And we, over the last 12 months, we have had the UK-UAE 2017 Year of Creative Collaboration, which staged 270 events across all 7 emirates in the UAE and involved 230,000 direct audiences and participants, and which involved 100 different partners, both British and Emirati. And I think that was all built around the whole idea of exchange rather than delivery, but exchange and the fruitfulness which that kind of exchange can bring. Well, the Abu Dhabi Festival, I think, is a prime example of, bringing together many different cultures and presenting them in a forum and in a place where historically there hasn't been that kind of cultural exchange, that level, that intensity of cultural exchange. Of course, actually, Abu Dhabi and what is now the United Arab Emirates has for centuries been a crossing point, a crossing point between East and West and many different cultures. But the kind of intensity and focused cultural exchange that ADMAF has brought is something new, and I think the impact that it is having is truly extraordinary. And of course, it's not because of the nature of Abu Dhabi and the UAE, with a very broad population drawn from something like 200 countries. It's a prime case, a prime opportunity for this kind of cultural exchange. One other thing that I haven't mentioned that is worth mentioning is the work that can also be done in training cultural entrepreneurs, because it's not easy to become the kind of cultural entrepreneur that, for example, Her Excellency Huda Khanu is. She is an extraordinary example of it. But those who aspire to do that, most of us to do that need some training, some tuition, some guidance. And I think that's something which different countries can help each other with. And so for the United Kingdom and for the British Council, it's been a privilege to be involved in the Cultural Excellence Fellowship Programme here in the UAE, which is all about that, all about building up cultural entrepreneurs for the future.